Hi everybody, my name is Magdalene Ratz. I was born in Hungary 1928, 3rd of August in Szeged. I was the first child of my mom and dad, and we lived in Szeged for about 4 years. And my dad was a fitter and turner. He worked for a company, and he asked to be transferred to the west side of the Hungary where there were more hills because I was anemic, and the doctor said the change of the air is beneficial for me. So then we went to Sopron and we lived there for until I was 15 years of age. And in that city, where I was born, was the second biggest city in the country at the time, and where we moved to Sopron, that was just a normal, average sized town. I can't remember how many people lived there then. And I went to my primary school. I did it in a convent. Nuns were teaching, and then I went to high school, and that was a public school. And I had to choose a second language to learn, and I chose to learn German because I never thought I will ever have a chance to move any further away from Hungary than the next door, Austria. And after I finished high school, I worked in a chemist shop, actually learning photography and developing an enlargement, and at the same time I studied shorthand and typing. But unfortunately, 1 year after I finished school, the war started, and eventually.
When did you know you had to leave, and when did you know you were going to come to Australia?
Oh, that comes later because we were in Austria quite a few years. Anyway, my dad decided that the community.
Before you go on, we have to do this sort of like an interview.
Yeah.
That's how they grade it.
Okay.
So I have to ask you questions.
So ask me the questions.
Okay. So how old were you when the war started?
The war started, I might have been 12 years old. Anyway, when the war started, I was visiting my grandparents in Szeged, and also I remember that day I was staying with an aunt and an uncle, and then at that time we heard on the radio that the war has started. And just a minute. But anyway, the war was very far away from us. But as the wars were coming closer and closer, we didn't think we will win the war, and my dad didn't want us to stay around to wait until the Russian takes over the country, and he decided we just have to leave home. So we planned to go to Austria, and we boarded the train. We had a few trunks with some of our belongings. I mean, by then I had two siblings, a sister and a brother, and so we boarded the train just with a suitcase among the five of us. And then we were in Vienna for about 3 weeks before they decided where we can go next step. But the next step, where we had to get off the train, unfortunately we got off the train one station before we were due, and nobody was expecting us there. So the first night we slept in a school classroom on straws. And then the next day we went to a little village where there were some holiday flats the people from Vienna used to have when they were holidaying there. And so we just got a flat in that place. And we were there for 4 years, and they were the most beautiful teenage years of my life. It really makes me emotional when I think of it. And so that was 30 kilometers from the next city, and my dad went to work in that city, and he rented a room with a family. And I remember at the time the war ended, and all these people were returning, and there were cars and tanks and everything left on the side road, motorbikes, and my dad assembled a motorbike by himself, and later on I think he sold it. And eventually he got a job in Linz in his profession, and the Linz was maybe a couple of hours away from Freistadt, and
You don't have to keep talking.
yes.
Sorry. So,
They were the most beautiful teenage years.
this way, I'm going to ask you the question.
Yeah, because
like before, you said that the 4 best years of your life were when you were at that.
yes.
Where you were staying. Why were they the best years of your life?
Because all my life I lived only cities, on the city, and this was in the countryside, and the country people and the countryside in Austria is just amazing. And also in the family I was the only one who spoke some German, because I learned it at the school for about 4 years, but you really have to live in the same country to really pick up the language, and I had to translate for my parents everywhere. Anyway, my sister was school age then, and she had to board a school with nuns again in Linz, no, in Freistadt. And my little brother was about 10 years old, and my dad was working. He came home for the weekends, and so the only people were there, the 3 of us. Anyway, going back to when we stayed in Vienna, the night we arrived in Vienna, the train station was attacked, a raid, and they bombed all our belongings, and then what was left of it they were looting, so we didn't have anything left. Between the 5 of us, just a suitcase. And so we ended up in this holiday house, which was very nice. It was the place of a general store, and the holiday places were upstairs. I think it was only 2 of it, so we lived there. And
Is that where you told me you went skiing that time?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, yes, they had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, Herman, Martha, and Elfie. And Herman said he's going to teach me skiing. Anyway, one Sunday afternoon we went to a hill which was really safe for a beginner, and then because that was the general store, the next week some people came to the shop, and they said they had the most beautiful entertainment on that Sunday, watching me learning to ski, falling over all over again. And that was really nice. And well, and then when we used to go dancing, and the custom was in the village that practically every weekend we went from village to village, and the farmhouses were something like that. Downstairs was a whole big area, and the kitchen in the corner, and the sleeping facilities were up there, so there was plenty of room to get the friends and the young people together to dance and to play games. and there was always somebody who played the piano, accordion, and that's what we danced to.
Did you always enjoy yourself through those years, or did you ever?
Oh, for me it was just like an adventure, because everything was new, and the worry and the problem belonged to the parents of, there were some other people there who, were in the same predicament as we are. But, and another problem was that because we got off the train earlier, we got stranded in the Russian zone, because at the time, during the war, and even after the war, Austria was sort of divided in half. The northern part was occupied by the Americans, and the southern part was occupied with the Russians. And so, and between the Russian area, the Danube divided it, and you had to have a passport to go from the Russian part to the American part. And so we didn't have the passport. My dad got a passport because he was working in the American side. So we had to, and then I think about 3 years have passed in Austria, and my dad said, and all some Hungarians after the war, they moved back to Hungary, and we had the feedback how terrible life was in Hungary then, and so my dad said, no, we are going to go back to the communist regime. But we had to, my mom and us three, we needed a passport. So some of my friends, one of my friends who really looked like me, she lent me her passport. Her mother lent passport to my mother. My two siblings didn't need any passport yet. And that was some anxious moments when we went, walked through the beach. But this side were the Russian soldiers, and the other side the Americans. And I looked at the picture, looked at the, we went through. That was exciting. So we got to Linz. That was 45, maybe.
Can we just go forward a few years? We come back to that later. Just to when you met Papa?
No, that's a while back.
Oh, come on.
And because I really enjoyed all this attention from boys and also the girls. I thought I am unique because I was somebody from, maybe some of them never been out of their village. And so
what year was that we just did?
That's 45. We were in Austria until about 48 or 49. And then when we got to Linz, my dad there were some like not cabins, but where the people who worked for this company lived there, and my dad was sharing a room with another man, and we had to go there so that when that man was on a night shift, that with the bed was free, so that when the four of us got there, we had somewhere to stay.
So how long were you away from your father for? Because you said that.
No, he came every weekend, came home with his passport.
Oh, okay.
He came back and forth. And so ask me some more questions.
Oh, well, it'd be cool if we could just skip forward to when you met Papa, because I love that story. So where were we staying when you met Papa?
Oh, that was after we had to go to places where we decided where we want to go to emigrate. And there was a chance to go to Venezuela, Norway, and that's what we should go to Australia because it's a new country, there must be a lot of opportunities. So we got all the papers and the visas, and then we were ready to leave Austria to go to start our journey to Australia. So we went by train to Naples, and we oh yes, but in Austria, before we went on the train to Italy, we had to go into a dormitory where all the people who were leaving to migrate, and that was in a big dormitory, and there were all these people, and there was this lady. She was talking about her son and bragging about him, and I thought to myself, gee, that boy must be a spoiled brat. But he was not there because he's supposed to have come later, because he was attending a farewell party to him from some scouts or something. And I was sleeping on a bunk bed across a few meters from me, and there was somebody lying in a bed, covered up to his big nose, and something in me said that he is the one, and he was the son of my future mother-in-law, which I had no idea then, Mrs. Ratz. And then,
the one who was bragging about.
Yes, the one she was bragging about. And then, then we went by train to Naples, and that's how I met him. And we were, oh yes, and because I was over 18 years old, they classed me as an adult, and my brother and sister, they were younger, they were cast as children. So at the time, 2 boats were leaving Naples, and one was a luxurious, beautiful ship called Worcester Victory, where my mom and dad, my siblings, got on, and I was separated from my parents. I had to go on a Norwegian old battleship because it wasn't safe to take children. So, and we lived in a tent for 3 weeks there before the boat left Naples. And then all night my little brother cried his heart out that we had to part. And so I had the journey without my parents.
Was that scary? Were you worried about anything?
Not really, no. But then my ship arrived in Melbourne, and my parents' ship arrived in Adelaide. And in the meantime, on the journey on the boat, that was 30 days, I sort of fell in love with Yancy. And the condition to come to Australia, we had to work for 2 years for the government, whichever job we were allowed to, allocated to. And it was either working in a factory or doing domestic work in a hospital or going to a family, like light home duties or whatever. And I have decided that to be able to pick up the language, you have to live among the people who speak the language. So I choose to work for a family.
Were they a nice family?
A wonderful family. Anyway, and we also communicated with my parents, and because for 2 years, you had to work in that contract, I told my parents, now for 2 years, I stay in Melbourne, and whichever place is the better, the other party will join you. So I stayed in Melbourne, and we got engaged 12 months after we got there, and the second year and 1 year after we got married. And for the engagement and for the wedding, we came to Adelaide and it was done here. And it was just beautiful. So, ask me questions.
Oh, well, with that family you said, what were they like?
Oh, this family, they were very rich. He owned a service station or two, and I travelled a lot. And I had 3 children between the age from 6, maybe 11 or 12. And when the parents travelled, their grandparents come to stay with us, but I was there, with the children. And they were such lovely children. They taught me English, and also at the same time I joined a night class to learn English. So that was good.
And what was Papa doing at this time?
Papa was still working where he used to work in Linz before we were still in the Russian zone. And also I forgot to say, while in Austria we had nothing, and my mother was a dressmaker and she used to do sewings for the farmers people in return for food or for some utensils or anything. We had nothing, and so whatever we got we had to collect again from scratch. And so
You once told me a story before that you were hiding under a bed at one point.
oh
What's
yes, that was still in Austria, in the country, and at the time we lived in like it was a mill, and there was I have got pictures I might show you later on that, and at the time there was rumors that Russian soldiers roaming the farms, and the ladies were all scattering and hiding, and then and we were upstairs and my dad went down and that came up and he said the house is full of Russian soldiers downstairs. So I was hiding under the bed, and then I could hear one soldier coming up, the heavy boots and everything. And the first thing he did knelt down and he had looked under the bed, and there I was in a boot, and he pushed and got me out, and then I was so scared, and then he laughed and cleaned my jumper or whatever. And I was lucky. He was a very nice oldish man. Otherwise it could have been a lot worse. Oh God, I never thought of this for ages. I should have had write down all these dates, but I did write down a couple I remember. Yes.
Okay, so when you first came to Australia, what was your first impressions? Did you like it?
It's heaven. It's heaven. Oh. The first thing when we got into the Sydney harbour, all this colour. Never seen anything like that before. But then I was picked up from the train station, from the people who employed me for 2 years. And there I was sitting, thinking of something I should say. And then I said, I wanted to tell them I am Hungarian, and I said I am hungry. And I could hear them talking among themselves, because one of the employees picked me up, not the people who I lived with, because they were away at the time. So when we got home, the first thing they did made some cup of tea and cake, and then I said no thank you, because I was so nervous I couldn't eat anyway. But at the time I didn't know how stupid I must have sounded all the way. Anyway, I think maybe a day after, the people came home. His name was Harold Britton, and his wife was Beryl, I think. And she told me later, before I came into the house, I looked through the window to see how I look, who I was. And at the time I was just having a glass of water near the sink. But those 2 years were so beautiful. I went on holidays with them everywhere. We lived in Sydney, in Coogee, and that was a place, even then, something out of this world. And then, yes, in the meantime, uh, the first year I went home to my parents, and Jansi's parents came, and we had the engagement there, and 2 years, 1 year after, we went there again to get married there.
Got back to Melbourne, you mean?
Oh yes, went back to Melbourne, but then in Melbourne we built a house. There were 5 people. One of them was an architect, and all these 5 people, with families, wanted to build a house, and I did this I don't know what you call it. All 5 of them made a contract among themselves that with the architects, at the head, they will build each other's houses. And the first house was built for somebody who had 4 children because they needed the most. And then they built our home as well. And so after we got married, Yancy met Lotzi Bachi, who lives in New South Wales, Coonabarabran, and he talked Yancy into getting in partnership with him to have a semi-trailer to be a carrier between states. So yes, in the meantime, we really thought about moving down to Adelaide from Melbourne, and then my mother and father-in-law said they're coming too because they didn't want to stay away from their only child and live in a strange city. So we just sold the house. Half of it we put into the business, and half we bought a house here in Adelaide at Wandilla Drive, and that was about 6 months after we came to Adelaide, and we stayed with my parents, and at the time, that was in 1955, and that was I was heavily pregnant when we came by car to Adelaide. And also we had a dog, our first dog, Tommy, and then at one stop where we stopped for meals or whatever, we left the dog behind. And then we realized it a few kilometers later, and we had to turn back and get the poor dog. Anyway, my little brother looked in the paper all the time where to find a house. And then he said, oh, there is a house not far from here, and that was number 8 Wandilla Drive, where we lived with my in-laws for a couple of years, and then maybe and we were thinking of having our own place, and then we did, because the block with the house was 2.5 acres. So we sold one corner, and we divided the rest, and so we had a block of land here, this bit. And I thought we don't want to stay so close with my in-laws, and the man came as an agent for some agent who sold houses. Took me around for a whole day to look at places and houses where we might like to buy into. And then we came back to Mum's place, and then the one of them said, So can we put up the sign that this block is for sale? And I thought, what? I could never live anywhere else but here. So it was off, and then we built this house. Some of the reason was that we really wanted to be on our own was that because my father-in-law sometimes was a bit of a strange man, and I had 3 children, and he said, your children don't need any friends because they got each other. And I thought that was a bit unhealthy. You have to have friends. So then we very soon started to build this house and moved up here. Not far away, but it was very nice and very good because my mother-in-law was here. She took care of the garden.
What did your parents and Papa's parents, what did they do? What job did they have here?
My parents, my dad had a good job. He was working in his profession somewhere in Adelaide. I can't remember for which company. And my mother really just worked for a Hungarian man who owned a restaurant. And they were all Hungarian people employed, to work in the kitchen. That's what my mom did, and my dad was doing his job. And so that was it. My sister went into to study in Cabra Convent High School, and they were nuns, and then one of the nuns who taught the German language, she didn't really speak German, and she had my sister's help how to do a lesson, and because my sister went to in the school in Austria, so she could speak pretty well German. I really picked up the German because I had the grounding for grammar and everything from Hungary, and so I did speak pretty well German.
Do you remember much difference between Australia and Hungary? Is there much?
Heaven and earth. That was the difference.
What?
In Hungary, before the war, it was all right, pretty good, but we didn't have a house, or people didn't have cars, and so we lived in an apartment house. We had a nice flat there, and then when we left. My mom's sister and her husband and only child, Lolly, they had to leave Szeged because the war was coming close, and Szeged was on the east side of the country, and the next was Romania, and then Russia. So he was working, I don't know wherever, but the company where my uncle was working left to get away from the war zone, and they stayed with us. And so when we left Hungary, they stayed in our flat, and then of course we had a lot of letters. I got hundreds of them, still couldn't bring myself to get rid of. They said that half of the apartment house was bombed, and where our flat was cut down in half, and all the furniture were exposed to the elements, but then Aloysi Bachi said that the people who got our furniture, the lady was always liked our furniture, and now she got them, and she told Aloysi Bachi that when we come back we will work it out who is going to have it. But it never eventuated because never ever wanted to go back to Hungary.
You said a while ago about an air raid, where you lost all of your luggage except like one suitcase or something. Did you have anything else like that? Was there any other air raids or close to the war?
we experienced an air raid in Hungary, and we lived on the third floor, and then always happened on the weekend, always close to lunchtime when people were in the middle of cooking. Anyway, we could hear the siren that the air raids is coming closer and closer, but we never took much notice because, it has never, they just flew over us and throw their bombs some other cities. But this time we started to hear the bombs falling and everybody was rushing down to go into the shelter. And that time we survived, but the house got the bomb after when we weren't there anymore. Oh Lord, and it brings back these memories.
Oh, I keep coughing.
So that's about.
I think that's all.
Yes.
Can we just do this opening scene again? Because I just need to ask you a few more questions. We're getting graded on how well we interview.
Yes.
So I just have to ask questions.
Oh, I thought the interview is not recorded. You're questioning.
Yeah, like I just keep asking you questions through the interview. So I will edit it all together.
Oh, so even you're asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I misunderstood because I
that's
thought.
okay. I still like your questions in there. It's only supposed to go for like 7 minutes, and we've been recording for about 37. So
7 minutes? What
Yeah.
can you do in 7 minutes?
I know, right? So if I just go, like, tell us a bit about yourself. Where were you born?
Didn't you record that?
Yeah, I did, but I need to ask questions.
Oh, so the
So
question.
just get the first few seconds again.
So where do I start?
I'll just go. Oh, okay. Can you just tell us a bit like where you were born and what year?
Yeah, Szeged was on the Tisza, a big river in Hungary, on the southeast side of the country, and my one of my dad's parents lived very very close to the river, and we went to the river there a lot, and these beautiful fishes, and we had dinner with these beautiful fishes prepared there, and there was one, at the time when we were in Sopron, we were visiting Szeged a lot of times because all my extended relatives lived there, and there was a playground next to the river, and I remember my grandmother taking us there a lot. I only had my sister then, and she was very little, and there's something I would like to tell you, but I don't want it on the tape.
No, I won't put it in the interview.
Well, anyway, she always bought a bag with her. There was a potty in it for my sister when she needed to go. And on the way home there was a church, and we went into the church, and he left the potty in the entrance to the church. Didn't want to bring it with her into the church. That was so funny. Yes, and my dad's hobby was oil paintings, and he, when John was back to visit Hungary, he smuggled a few of Dad's painting without the frames, of course, to bring it out. And this is one which Dad painted, and that was the one which Dad painted, and that's a nice something to remember him by.
I never knew that.
Yes, and because it was illegal to bring out art, so my brother smuggled it out. Yeah.
Can we just say one more thing? You told me once how your dad wasn't, like he was Hungarian because he was born there.
Oh, yeah.
But legally he was actually German?
No, legally he was Czechoslovakian.
Can we get that story?
Because he was born in Budapest, but his parents emigrated from Czechoslovakia to Budapest while the Austria-Hungarian monarchy was still in place, and all these countries like Czechoslovakia, Germany and Hungary were all in one, and I didn't need any passport or anything. It was just like traveling in their own country. And when that Austrian-Hungarian monarchy has stopped, didn't know, my dad didn't know that now he has to apply for the Hungarian citizenship. And then you were right at the time, they did belong to Austria, which is part of Germany as well. So, and then when the Second World War broke out, and he thought he will have to enlist and go to the war, I said, you can't go to the war because you are stateless. And Dad said, oh great, I don't have to leave my family to go to the war. So we didn't worry about getting a Hungarian citizenship then. And then we never did. We were all born in Hungary, we could only speak Hungarian language. And and by the time we thought we might need it, we left.
So it worked out better for you anyway.
Oh yes, a lot
Didn't have to go
better.
to war.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mama.
Oh, thank you very much.